Hello and welcome to the Steel Beast Beginner's Guide. I hope this is going to be a bit of a mini series that's focused on getting the new player to Steel Beast up and running. Let's go ahead and get started. So the real motivation for making this video series is I've seen a lot of questions on various mediums asking things about really what you would consider basic concepts as far as Steel Beast. This is everything from, how do I buy Steel Beast? How do I install the program? And, what all do I need to actually do in order to get ready for my first mission in the simulator itself? A bit about me, I've been playing Steel Beast since 2012, so that'll be about 8 years at the time of this video publication. So I'm not going to say that I am a master or an expert of the simulator. I'm always learning new things every time I use it, but I've got a basic idea of how it works and would like to share my tips and my ideas for going from just buying the simulator in the first place to moving on to where you're doing company level missions and possibly even joining into multiplayer in a leadership role. So let's start with the first one, which is the options for buying Steel Beast Professional. Now, as far as Steel Beast, there is the reputation of it being a $125 game that comes with a code meter USB dongle. That is that thing right there, which looks exactly like mine. And that is an option. With that, you purchase the game, you pay $125, they ship the USB stick to you. You also get 30 days of playtime prior to the USB stick arriving, and you have it and can play this current version pretty much forever. So that is the basic license, and that was the only real mainstream license back when I purchased this back in 2012. However, now, and for several years, I should say, they do have time-limited licenses which are available. These are available in 1 month, 4 years, or 1 year total. I would honestly, if you have not played Steel Beast and you're looking into it and you're interested, I would highly recommend getting the 1 month license. You're paying, less than $10. You get it, you install it, you try Steel Beast, and you see if you like it. If you don't like it, well, you spent $10 on the game versus $125. The other option, too, is if you get it and you like it, but you're not sure you're going to play it for a significant amount of time, getting the 1 year license is honestly a very good option, in my opinion. You've got to think, out of all the simulators that you've played in the past, have you played them over 1 year? Only you can answer that. Now, with purchasing, it is of note that you do have to buy these with a credit card. I know in some European countries that may be a bit of an issue, so they don't have PayPal support or any third-party support at this time. You have to physically buy it with a credit card, so bear that in mind when you're purchasing it. So after that, we're going to talk about installing the program itself. Now, with version 4.1, the new terrain engine came out and the maps work a little bit differently. In the old days, you could simply install the Steel Beast program, all of the maps would be together, and you just run it, and it's simple. Now it's based on the size of the maps, they're a separate download. So there are really 3 things you need to make sure that Steel Beast runs. The first one is your code meter software so that your licensing works. This does come with the Steel Beast program itself, but if you want to make sure you're downloading the latest version, you go here, weeboo.com, or you can go to Google and just type in code meter. And you'll go to support and downloads, down here, user software, and you can search through and select your operating system if it's different, but for most people, you're going to be running Windows, so you can download the code meter user runtime for Windows and put that in your installation folder. I have one here. I've already got the program installed, but this is an example of how you may want to do it. Steel Beast installation, and then you've got the 3 separate parts: code meter, maps, and then the Steel Beast program itself. Now, with the license activation, I'm not really going to go into that in this video simply because I don't have a license to activate. But in the event that you get the license in your email and you're unsure of how to proceed, you can go to the SteelBeast forums, steelbeast.com, and there is a license activation how-to thread placed under support. And you can go through this, and I'll put a link so that everyone can access it if you're having trouble. And you can go through here, and S-Snake, the director of eSIM Games, does a very good job of explaining how you actually activate licenses. So with licenses done, with the code meter installed, the next portion you want to look at is installing the maps and following that with the program. Now, the recommendation is that you install the maps first, as it will automatically go to the default SteelBeast folder, not find it, create it, and it just makes sure that there's not any issues if you're trying to put SteelBeast somewhere else on your hard drive. So, as mentioned, this is currently version 4.167. What I would recommend doing for this and any future version is you can click here under the download portion on the eSIM website and pull up the release notes. I'll go ahead and do that. And on here on page 3 of it, there is an installation guide explaining exactly everything that you need to do to install it. So if something I say in this video is confusing or doesn't make sense, look here, read through it, and it'll get you on track. But now that we're on here, the first portion is the SteelBeast Maps installer. So you're going to download Map Installers Part 1A through 3C, as well as the executable. I've went ahead and downloaded those because they're pretty significant, and they'll all be in here. You'll have a bunch of bin files, and you'll have the application itself. You'll run the application, go through the wizard, install everything, and then you're good to go there. The next portion following that is going to be the SteelBeast program itself. So you're going to go down here to where it says SB Pro PE 4.167 installer. This may be different if it's in the future and there's a new version, but it should look similar. And you're going to download Part 1 through Part 6, which you'll put, of course, in your installation folder. Now, Part 2s through 6 as of this version are zip files. You don't need to unzip anything. Don't touch them. Just download them and leave them there. And run the Part 1 installer. Go through the setup process, and it will put everything on your computer in the appropriate place. After that, yeah, that's all there is to installation. So the installation folder you created, you can go ahead and delete that. Now, before we load up the actual game itself, I wanted to show a few things. So if you go into where SteelBeast is installed, this is by default, see Program Files, eSIM Games, SteelBeast Pro PE. There's a document folder right there. You can click that, and two things I'd like to draw your attention to are, one, the manual, which is very in-depth. It's got a lot of good information. I don't necessarily think that you should read the entire thing before playing because that's a bit silly, but once you start getting into missions such as, understanding how to move units on routes and how they behave when given various orders, this will do a very good job of explaining it and help answer a lot of those questions. The other one that's useful that I'd recommend printing out or keeping on your phone or something of that nature while you're learning SteelBeast is the keyboard chart. You go under PDF for print and you select one in a language that's most appropriate for you. Here it is, and you can put this on your phone or print it out and put it somewhere nearby, so it's a quick reference to understand all of the controls as far as the keyboard in SteelBeast itself. So now that we've gone through the installation process, it's time to load SteelBeast itself. But first, I'll go ahead and show a very common issue that some new users have. So I'm going to remove my code meter stick, go to run SteelBeast Pro, and what happens is you get a license failure. Now, when this occurs, there are a various number of reasons why this could occur. One is that you don't have the code meter software installed, which if you download it from Weeboo's website, or if you install it, the default version that comes with SteelBeast, that shouldn't be the issue. The other is to make sure that you have an active license. Again, go through the license activation portion and make sure you're doing that properly. If you need any help with that, you can go on the Steel Beast forums, and we will be glad to help you get your game running. So I'm going to put back the code meter stick into my USB hub. There it is, popped up, awesome. And then click retry, and Steel Beast will load. Go ahead and click through the splash screen. All right, so you're now in Steel Beast, and this is going to be your first time looking at it, so there's a few options that you want to go through first. The first is you're going to go to Records. By default, you will have a user called Lieutenant Default. That's probably not what you want to name yourself, so you can go into Add User and type in whatever you want to call yourself. I'll do Revenant because that sounds like a pretty cool name. You select that, and that is now the active user. Now, this has some statistics here, such as your hit percentage, user kills, flawless fratricides, how well or poorly you've done in missions, etc. But something I'd like to focus on here is the gunnery rating. Currently, it's 0. Now, the gunnery rating is tied to how well your artificial intelligence gunner shoots in any vehicle that's under your control. So, if you have an individual vehicle and that's it, then your gunner will be as good as your gunnery rating. Obviously, the maximum gunnery rating is 100, so higher is better. The gunnery rating is not tied to any specific platform, so if you go to the tank range and shoot an M1A2 and get a 100, and that is your gunnery rating. So if you have an AI gunner in an M2A2 Bradley fighting vehicle, they will also use the 100 gunnery rating. Bottom line, this is to reflect, doing better at gunnery and to reward you as a player for really being able to target and destroy your enemy in a very efficient manner. All right, after that's complete, I like to go to options. You can mess with some things. I'm going to turn the difficulty down to medium and the realism to high. That's what I normally work with, and that's what I'd recommend as well for beginner settings. Now, once that's complete, you're now going to want to get into stuff that you need to do in order to learn the game and before your first mission. So I'd go to tutorials, and there are a variety of vehicles to pick from. I would recommend training on either the M1A2 which is right there, or the Leopard 2A5. Both of these vehicles are very commonly used in user-made scenarios. That's both them as well as their variants. And the Leopard 2A5 and the M1A2 are similar enough where once you've learned one, it's very easy to learn the other platform. So for the sake of this video, I'm going to assume that we're going to do tutorials on the M1A2. You'll go in here, and I'm not physically going to run through these tutorials because they're pretty self-explanatory, but I would recommend going through Gunnery A all the way to at a minimum artillery or multiple units, depending on how quickly you want to get in the game itself. Now, with all of these, they're pretty self-explanatory. I know there are some videos of people physically running these gunnery tutorials and driving tutorials, etc. You can watch those if you want, but the tutorials are very good, and if you go through this entire series on the same platform, you're going to learn it and you're going to be successful. After you've completed the tutorials on your chosen vehicle and you're very confident with all of the material presented, it's time to go to the tank range. Now I'm going to go ahead and do that. M1A2, I'm going to select Revenant, my new user, as the person to play the mission as, and we'll go ahead and go through the tank range itself. Alright, let's get started. So you'll start in the gunner's seat. I recommend 100% turning on your thermals and using the laze and blaze method. That is, you laze and you fire. And yeah, I'm doing very well to start. But anyway, yeah, you basically go through this process. My recommendation as far as the tank range, you'll see some range fans. There's one. There's another one over here, well, over there, my commander's directing me onto a new target. And bottom line, you just want to scan very aggressively between the two. So, for example, basically doing this back and forth. Now, there may be an issue where the turret gets out of control for you. If that's the case, just left-click with the mouse. That will simulate releasing the controls, and that's going to bring it to a stop. Okay, in this case, that was an enemy personnel carrier. You can tell with the M1A2 or any M1 variant if you've got the right round indexed by if it's flashing at the top of the screen there, you don't have the right round indexed. Now I do, because I am using heat, which is the delete key, as indicated in the keyboard control printout. And, you know, we've got Sabo, so you index Sabo and continue the fight.
Tank, fire! Target! Up!
So I know a lot of new players try to run through this in the day sight. It's a method, and there's definitely a time and a place for using the day sight on a tank. At the gunnery range, though, you want to be able to quickly identify your targets and be able to engage them. You're looking at both accuracy as well as average engagement time in order to get the best score possible.
Tank, fire, fire, Sabo. Target!
As far as indexing rounds, it's a thing that you do have to learn. It takes some muscle memory. So, you know, don't be upset if at first you're having to stop, look at the key, you know, consult your controls or anything of that nature to make sure you're indexing the right round.
TC, fire, fire, heat.
Let's see if I can get this.
Target!
Alright, so that's the gunnery range, and you can play this as often as you want. So, what I've got here is user score is 95 out of 100. That means that my gunnery score for user Revenant is now 95%, which is very good. 100 is, of course, the best possible one, so I may want to, in the future, go back and do some retraining and get back on the gunnery range. You can see down here some basic statistics, you know, kills that you personally did. That's cool. It's a gunnery range, whatever. But the things to look at are hit percentage and average time to kill. What I would recommend doing as far as gunnery, and a good spot when you know that it's time to move on to instant action, is get to the point where you can get a hit percentage of about 80% and an average time to kill of about 8 seconds. And be able to do that reliably, where every time you run the gunnery range, that is the minimum score that you're achieving. Obviously, you know, you want to run through it and try to become as good as possible, but once you reach that level, you're good enough to move on to instant action itself. Now, for the instant action tutorial, the instant actions here, you can select the M1A2. This is very much an action-oriented kind of Hollywood sort of thing, where you're not focused on tactics as much in the grand scheme of things. Like, you're not commanding a platoon, you're not able to retrograde, you're just stuck at a position, you have unlimited ammo, and you've got an unlimited number of enemy vehicles that spawn and move towards your position that you have to kill. I would recommend becoming very comfortable with the commander's seat once you move on to instant action, and I'll go ahead and show you that really quick. So, with this here, right, you can go ahead and set your sectors of fire. Enemy normally comes down this road, goes across these bridges, and then tries to attack you. Some other things that you might try as well is if you right-click, there's some artillery that you can call in. Practice with that a bit. You know, it's pretty easy. You can just go to high explosive, do a 400 by 400, that's width and length in meters, and I like to do at my command so that the guns get ready, and then um, after this amount of time, it's usually about 2 minutes and 30 seconds,
TC.
counts down to 0.
Fire.
Go ahead and give them the command to fire.
On the way.
And we'll see. Yeah, the gunner's alright sometimes. Sometimes he's
On the
not.
way.
Go ahead and take over there.
Fire, heat.
And, some other tactics you might want to do in that case, the enemy PC fired a missile at us. I don't know if you saw that in the thermals. So being able to pop smoke when that occurs is going to, get you having some good practices as you move forward. So, with the commander's seat, I'd recommend getting comfortable here. Get pretty decent at, maneuvering your tank, moving it around,
Reverse right.
telling your gunner to, look to the right, look left, look forward, etc. And go through this process and just use it as a practicing ground until you get pretty comfortable with fighting your tank itself. Go ahead and laze there. That was awful. Let's try again.
Target.
And yeah, lasing and blazing, like I said, is a definitely good way to go here.
Target.
And like I said, you get used to them firing missiles at you that whizzed over our head, went to the woods there. So, shoot, deploy your smoke, and move to an alternate position. Anyway, that's enough of this. I'm sure if you've got Steel Beast, you can play this to your heart's content. So we'll go ahead and go to the AAR screen here. Now, what I'd recommend doing with instant action is get to the point where you can reliably kill about 5 to 6 enemy vehicles. And that's pretty much your standard. That means you've gotten pretty decent at both practical gunnery as well as being able to maneuver your tank and ensure that you're doing some survivability drills. Now, an interesting thing that you can do as well in the AAR is you can turn on events here. We'll go into the world view, and you can see various things as far as how your rounds are impacting. So let's go to the first vehicle we destroyed, which is this one. And it gives you a pretty good idea on seeing where your round is impacting, how it's affecting the vehicle, and it'll give you a decent idea of how your gunnery is. If you're making pretty good, mostly center of mass shots, or if you're, like flying above the turret and just barely grazing, a periscope or something of that nature. Hey, so at this point, after you've gotten good with instant action, you'll be ready to move on to your first scenario, which I'll cover in a follow-on video. So what I'd like to say is, if you've got any questions, leave them in the comments below. In the meantime, if you've also got any questions as well, you can join the Steel Beast forums, located here at steelbeast.com. We are a very friendly community who's very welcoming for newcomers, so head on there. Give us a shout, and I'll see you guys at a later date.